That's 296 for 6. Verena will pull this one away, all the way for a huge 6. And Verena has done it. And Nottinghamshire are county champions for the first time in 15 years. Hasib Hamid and his troops have done it. A magnificent moment in the club's history.
Well, hello, and that was the exciting, impassioned commentary of Dave Bracegirdle on Nottinghamshire's title-winning moment. Carl Verena hitting that huge 6 over mid-wicket to give Nottinghamshire their first title for 15 years. And our guest today is the man who sort of orchestrated that, really. So welcome to the Analyst Inside Cricket with me, Simon Hughes.
And I'm Simon Mann.
And our special guest, of course, is Peter Moores, the title-winning coach of 3 counties now, 4 championship-winning titles. Mooresy, that's incredible. 2 for Sussex, 1 for Lancashire, and now 1 for Notts. I mean, firstly, how were the celebrations yesterday?
Well, they keep trying to give me 2, but I think they're trying to rob one of Robbo, because 2006 was Robbo's title, I think. So 6, but I'll take the 3 from the 3 different counties. But how was it? How was the celebration? Well, they're still going on, actually. I left the lads yesterday. We walked round Notts Forest game at half time last night, yesterday, which was great fun, actually, for the lads. Yeah, it was brilliant. I mean, I think you have so many different emotions when you go through that championship running, because the way the championship works, it is the tournament that threads the whole of the domestic season together. So we start in April. We then go into T20s. We lose our players, or part of the team go and play the 100 for a completely different team for a month. And eventually you get them back, and we got them back for the last 3 games of the season, which we won all 3. So it has so many different challenges, keeping the lads together, pulling them back in. But we've been those emotions you go through in the last 3 games, from chasing Surrey to start with, playing a euphoric game against them at the Oval, which was probably... Well, it's the best domestic 4-day game I can remember being involved in. And brilliant that it was actually on Sky at the time, so people could actually watch it. So a great advert for our domestic game, really. And then the last game against Warwickshire, when it's a completely different pressure, because now we're holding the ball and we could drop it and we've got a lead. So actually finding, when you do get over the line, part of the celebrations, it's relief, I think, that you've got there. You finally got over the line and you've done it. And some of the, I was a head coach anyway, for me, some of the really nice things, I think, are the week after, when you start to just sort of settle down and think back about some of the moments in the season.
And one of the moments that I suppose you will treasure is at the end of that match against your title-winning match, when you beat Warwickshire. You were presented, I read, with the MOM blazer, which was originally brought in by Fergus O'Neill, your overseas player, at the beginning of the season. A blazer presented to a person or a moment at the end of the match that was significant. And I don't think I've ever heard of that before, a coach being presented with a sort of player or man of the match award, which is what happened a couple of days ago, right?
Yeah, it did. It was lovely. Could never expected it, to be fair. And Josh Tong had it from Surrey, because he'd obviously had a brilliant game against Surrey. Took the 3 key wickets at the end of that game. And yeah, and I was sort of making sure he was on, really. So before I'd said, listen, Tong, are you on? Because obviously the game's got to finish. You've got the jacket. And I'm expecting him to give to Hasib, who got 100 in the first innings, had a brilliant season, captain of the club. And then, yeah, he gets up and just said a few words, whatever, and then give it to me. So, yeah, quite an emotional moment for me, actually. It was nice. Everybody's in the dressing room at the time. It was lovely. And then obviously my job is then to wear it. So I was still wearing that jacket when I was walking around the Forest Ground yesterday. So very proudly, I might add.
Brilliant. And I just love the contrast with the jacket I was once presented. Actually, it was a tie rather than a jacket. Durham University, we had something called the CIR tie,
right,
which stood for Career in Ruins. And if you had an absolute nightmare, you were presented with the CIR tie, which I had to wear a few times. Fantastic. Anyway. Yeah. So it's brilliant. That's a little brilliant touch, actually, for you as a coach. I mean, just one other thing, I suppose, before Simon sort of talks as well. I remember winning the championship for Middlesex against Sussex, your Sussex, in 1990, and you were playing in that game,
I
and
was.
we finished the match with. In fact, I got the last 2 wickets by some kind of miracle to win the championship. And I just remember the feeling, this sort of incredible sensation, even though we had done it before. That feeling of getting over the line and being in triumph for a thing which lasts all season. Can you put that into words? I mean, it's different for a coach, I suppose, but in a way, it's even worse, more sort of momentous for a coach because you've done all the planning and you can't actually control anything on the field, but you're sort of living every moment with them.
Yeah, I think you've summed it up in some ways because it's so long, and actually it starts before Christmas. Really, you start doing the work with players, and you're going through the whole thing. At the end of every season, all coaches and all support teams and captains will sit down and you try and plan your season, and you'll talk about what you're going to do, the players, the overseas players you might bring in, who's coming through, what youngsters you've got to try and get in the team. And it all starts to build up. And then by the time you get to September the 27th or whatever it was, the last day, you've been through 2 or 3 moments when it could have all gone wrong. And we had lunchtime at Worcester, we could have lost that game. Our season was hanging by a thread, really. And we came out, played brilliant after lunch and won the game. And at Surrey, anybody who watched that game was... It was yin and yang in both ways all the way through. We had control of the game, and then suddenly Fisher bowled this unbelievable spell over 3 or 4 overs when he got a wicket every over pretty much. And suddenly we were thinking, it's gone. And then me and Patterson White steps up and Lyndon James. And I think then by the time we got to that final game, everybody's telling you've already won it, and you still know the way the season works, that if we don't get to 300, and then Warwickshire post 200 to win, let's say, and Surrey go on and win the game, which I always thought Surrey had a great chance, but they're a very good side at fighting back. You watch how many times they've won after losing first innings, it's very hard. Then suddenly we'd have one of those horrible twitchy run chases. Now, the impact of that on the pressure at the end of the season was probably seen with Durham yesterday. That pressure of it's there. We see it in run chasing one-day cricket all the time. 30 to win suddenly seems like 300. So we avoided that. And I think that's something I was really pleased with the players because we've really tried to keep momentum in a game when we've got it. And the Surrey game, we couldn't because they kept fighting back and we kept fighting back. And it was one of those games. But when we actually got over the line, the 300 moment, we got over there, it's like when people say you play top flight sport, just relax and go and play, they're talking absolute rubbish for me because nobody just relaxes and plays. You just handle being under a level of tension. And that's what you are. I mean, if you're doing a big broadcast, you're going to have a level of tension. And when you stop and it's gone well, then that's why you feel euphoric because you've done it. You've achieved. And I think that moment when we got the 300, that's the feeling I had was, yeah, we've done it. We've absolutely done it. It's this moment. And you could feel the sort of pressure released from everybody around you. All the support staff are there. All the players are there. And really, you just want to run the field, really. The 2 batters are there. You want to run on and give them a hug, say, well done. And then the game carries on. So it's that weird feeling that of waiting till the end of the game when you finally get over the line.
Let's go back to that Surrey match, Peter, and talk about clutch moments. You mentioned the partnership of the Patterson White and Lyndon James partnership. What about on the final day when Patterson White came on to bowl? Because Tom Curran was again taking the game away from you, wasn't he? And it was the first over spin in the match. I was sitting at the over watching that, and I thought, this is a good piece of captaincy. This has to happen. What were you thinking about that? And obviously it worked because he got a wicket in his first over. Tom Curran ran down the pitch, missed the ball, was really well stumped. What were you thinking at that moment when your captain brought on Patterson White to bowl?
Yeah, I thought it was the right decision. And I'm not saying that with hindsight. It was a risk. There's no doubt about that because Tom Curran's trademark is he's a games player. So there's sort of two sorts of players to play the game now, probably more than there ever was. I think there's sort of people who've become technical players who I don't think really get the most out of themselves in the game. And then people might say they're overcoached, they may be, but they've forgotten the game and what it is. Tom isn't one of them. Tom's very much a situation, emotional player. He senses something. So when he came in and he sensed a moment and him and Dan Lawrence grabbed it and suddenly they flipped the game and they were scoring at a rate that nobody had really scored in the game, we were suddenly, if that had carried on for 2 or 3 overs, we were basically, we were gone. So he had to make some intervention. What I really liked, so I think he tried, bowling Josh Tong is one, could the extra pace do something? Going to spin was an inspired choice in the end because, TC, he's going to have a go at it. He can't not, really, because he's thrown the gauntlet down. And it was a brilliant moment because Cal Vrain had quite a tough day behind the stumps and then suddenly took a brilliant stumping because it went under the bat, ran him down the leg side, and he took it like it was a piece of cake, to be fair, and took the stumps off. And that, somebody asked me what's my favourite moment in the season. I think that's probably it. That's what I said because, again, everything's on the line. The captain has to make a decision, which is a bit like jumping off a cliff, hoping that you'll land softly. We're going for it, and it worked. And I think at that moment, whatever happened in that game, win, lose or draw, it was going to be an unbelievable finish. And I think both sides can take a huge amount of credit from it.
Yeah, it was a brilliant last day. It was an excellent game. Let's go back to the start of the season. So you mentioned the planning there that you have to put into a season. Last year you finished 8th. Season before you finished 6th. Season before that you were in the second division. You won the title. At the start of the season, you do all this planning. You look at your squad. You think, how could we go this season? Did you allow yourself to think in any way that the title was a possibility this season, or does that you never think in those terms?
Well, the way I've worked it, and I've changed over the years because it does change. The game's changed, hugely changed. So at the start of the season, I did an interview with Dave Bracegirdle, funny enough, and I said, one thing I will say, we're not a team in transition anymore. We're now, we've got the players back in. The year before, we'd had a few lads come in, and that means you've got to settle them in. It takes a bit of time. So I think we could be competitive, and I thought we could be a top 4 side. If we could win it or not, I always say to the players, winning's a byproduct of what we do. So I work the system slightly differently, if I'm honest. Everybody talks about teams. When any player comes to us, I say the same thing. All I'm going to try and do, I'm going to try and make sure that we try and help you get better. You can go and smash the world. Basically, I've got a son who plays the game. That's how I want to treat. That's how I treat him. The same. So I'll treat you exactly the same. I'll treat you. So, 2 things. I'll give you my dad advice and my head coach's advice if you want, but we'll treat you the same and that might be played for England, playing franchise, playing for Notts. Now, because I believe totally that the winning is a byproduct, we'll celebrate you. You've got one thing you have to do to keep the deal intact and the contract intact, I think, with everybody here, and that's you've got to celebrate the team. So you play for the team, but we'll help you be better because go back to that Surrey game. Ben Slater got 50 first innings, played beautifully. We lost the toss at Surrey, where historically you would get rolled. On a wicket that's green, it's got juice in it, it's nicking all over the place. Ben Slater played brilliantly. Now, he's not doing that if he's not skillful enough. That's not happening. He might want to, desperately want to, but he's a golfer who wants to land it on the green in the big moment. He can't do it unless he's skillful enough. So our job really as coaches is to help him be skillful enough in the moment. And if he does, then he can help us achieve things. The same as a bowler hitting top off stump, making the ball move rather than just hit the seam and go dead straight, the way of the field, taking unbelievable catches. So you ask how we do it, every morning you'll watch as our slippers take 50 catches. We've caught some unbelievable catches. Freddie McCann at slip at 19, 20 has been brilliant. Calvin Harrison, brilliant, and he played. Liam Patterson-White's now coming as a youngster and starting to do well. But there's a volume to doing that at some point in your career, which is very different because county cricket, we've got a 17-year-old in Farn Ahmed playing. We've got a 35-year-old in Mohammed Abbas. Internationally, you've got much more. much more finished articles. So the way they have managed is different, but county cricket, it's about growth. In fact, actually, I don't think international as well, it's about growth in team, really, because you get better. So why have we won it? Because we've got better quicker than anybody else. That's why.
Was there also, I mean, the planning part of it, I'm quite interested in because, funny enough, I remember, I mean, one of Nottinghamshire's previous titles, long time back now in my era, Hadley and Rice influenced 1981, Richard Hadley and Clive Rice. And Richard Hadley was a great planner. In fact, I think it was 1984 when he did the double, he planned every match and how many wickets and how many runs he would score in every game at the beginning of the season. So is your job in a way now, I mean, with so many players coming and going and overseas players not available for the whole season, I sort of almost imagine it's like an Excel spreadsheet where you kind of, list out every match and, which players might be available and who you might need in future. Is there, does it go to that level, or is it kind of more uncertain? So you've got to kind of almost operate on a whim rather than a sort of overseason plan.
It's somewhere in between, I suppose. I mean, realistically, for me, there's a lot of trust involved for me the way we deal with players. You don't know exactly what squad you're going to get at any given time. Overseas wise, you're going to do your planning to try and get them. And patchworking that is really difficult. Obviously, I work closely with Mick Newell, director of cricket. We identify players, and the challenge is, can you get them available at the right time? Sometimes you're lucky with them now because international schedules so busy you get injured and you've got to have a contingency plan. But I'm not a big one for planning every second of everything because sport's too fluid. It doesn't work like that. What I do believe is that the people you've got at the time, you're working really hard, and it's a balance of this individual skill development of people. The environment you're playing is huge, so they feel loved. Really, they can come in knowing in some ways as a place that there's somewhere committed to them to get better, and their game. And as I say, I'm pretty. If I'm strict on anything, it's them being committed to other people, because we're going to do everything to be committed to them to help them do it. So that to me is how it works. To plan it all out, of course you have a plan. You've got your idea. Listen, we had Fergus for the first part of the games, Mo Bass coming in. We hope we keep people fit. Internationally, Josh Tong, if we're going to get him or not, I always assume the international guys will never get them. Then if we get them, it's a bonus. But I'm not going to assume we're going to get them because we had Stuart Broad for quite a long time. And Stuart, if you got him, he was fantastic all around. But you can't. He's not our player. He's an England player. Do I want people to play for England? Yeah, of course I do. Because when I was a kid, at school, I'd write myself in an England team, as most kids did. So it's their dream. Why would I want to take that away? Do I want to play franchise in the winter? Yeah, why not? Why? They've got one chance. They've got a chance to go out and live, meet people, do different things. How long will they play for? I don't know. But I think that approached me as a player, and that's why I love Fergus O'Neill when he first came. This lad came from Australia. First time he'd been on a long haul flight, I think, for Fergus. He just wanted to live life on and off the field, actually, in a lovely way. It was like the old-fashioned style. But what you had to love about it was he was making the most of it. He was here for a couple of months and he was going to live it. Played brilliant on the field. Had an absolute ball off it. Made some brilliant friends. And I think within a couple of games, he's one of those lads that was basically saying, we're going to win it. Lads, we're going to win it. So he's a breath of fresh air. So he was a real injection. And then we had the complete different sort of character in Mo Bass, who has been a brilliant team man, as well as a brilliant player. All the good players, I think, are normally great. They understand teams. So to give you an idea of Mo Bass, he played an early game for us at Yorkshire, Joe Clark's birthday. We finished the game and a cake arrived that Mo Bass had organised, a birthday cake with Joe's name on the top, had organised, and he came to the dressing room and we all sang him happy birthday, organised by Mo, which was a great effort. So with that sort of thing is what makes a team. And I give Hasib a lot of credit for that, because last year, his first year's captaincy, I think he captained well on the field, but didn't understand the off-field stuff. I think this year He came back, he's connected the lads, they've been to dinner together, they've had more fun together. And with that, he's got much more out of his pen.
That's interesting, actually, isn't it? The influence of an overseas player that, going back to your first championship title in 2003, as I mentioned before, you had Mushtaq Ahmed for the whole season, 100 wickets, Murray Goodwin, 1,500 runs. Those two were kind of the core pillars of the team, and they were there all season. Now you're talking about kind of bringing overseas players in and out according to their availability and what you need and so on. But they can have other influences like the Blazer and the Fergus O'Neill sort of mantra attitude, Mo Abbas kind of throwing himself in. So they can't necessarily play the whole season, but they can have a sort of quite a season's impact in different ways.
Yeah, very much so, because the better the player in some ways, the more weight his words carry, the more weight his actions carry. So you get a bad one that can also influence people in the wrong way. So like every championship team I've had, the overseas players will have a strong influence, but it'll be also the core of the team that are Hughes. So in that season when we won it, I think James Kirtley had ripped it up in the first half of the season and then got injured. But he got loads of wickets in the first 7 or 8 games that got us out of the blocks. You had a load of youngsters who'd come through, Kirtley, Lurie, Martin Jenkins, a very young Matt Pryor. Chris Adams as captain was leading the troops. So lots of different influences in all those teams. And you look at our team now that's just won it, lots of different influences from old and young. Great seasons for Benny Slater, his sort of county stalwart, and Hatiba Mead, who's come back in. Youngsters like Farn Ahmed at 17, Freddie McCann at 19, coming in and really making an impact. And the lads who've been at the club for long. Yeah, Brett. I mean, Brett has been an absolute rock for us, leading wicket taker. Anybody watched him bat at the Oval. So when I go for skill, Brett came back to us. He was our player. Then he went to Northampton for a couple of years and came back. He bats every day, Brett. Now, when he's going to have his innings that makes the most difference, you never quite know. But those 75 runs he got in that game without getting out were absolutely pivotal in winning the game. As was at Lancashire, we won at Somerset. Gary Peedy, who never had a run out, and we used to throw at the stump every morning, ran out the last batter. So we chased 220 or whatever it was, and we couldn't get the last wicket. The Taunton, it had gone flat. Ball goes to the backward point. Gary Peedy picks it up, and God knows how he did it, but he hit the stumps. And he ran him out. But what I would say is, you basically do the work, and in some ways, I don't think that work has to feel like hard work. It can be, you can make it a game, make it good fun. But eventually, hopefully, like anything you do, you get better at it. And I don't care what the walk of life is. If you were a carpenter, you're not going to get very good unless you do a lot of it, unless you work with wood. Then you're going to get good. Now, cricketers don't get better without practicing in a way that has context to it, that has a meaning to it, that is linked to the game. Then you become a games player, not a technician. But what am I doing it for? What am I in the nets for? What am I bowling for? What am I feeling for? Our job as coaches is to help it link it all in. So listen, we're doing this because, playing T20, there's a run at every innings in a game. There's one. That's why we practice. Because it might win you the game. If you want to win trophies, if you want to get over the line, you're going to have to do the other little bits that go with it.
Just nip back to Fergus O'Neill very briefly, Peter. Is he a potential kind of like Ashes bolter this winter? I mean, he took 21 wickets at 17. He's got a good record domestic. He's an emerging young bowler. Is he an international bowler of the future, or is this Ashes series? If Australia did have injuries, would it come a bit too early for him?
I fancy it would probably be a bit early for him in Australia. He did really well in Australia, so he got a great record at the MCG. I fancy it would be a bit early for him. I think if they're overseas, certainly if they come to England at some point, for him to get on a tour there would make sense. I think generally he's still growing as a bowler. I think he'll probably end up a little bit quicker as he sort of fills out a bit and he gets a little bit more pace. What he is, he's really skillful. He's an English bowler, if I'm honest. Great seam position, in and around. We played probably, at Trent Bridge, Trent Bridge is like yours. You played there. It nipped Certainly does in the first couple of days, and he maximised out on that. And then he had enough control later on when the wicket got flat to be able to hold and create pressure. And we played at Warwickshire this year when they left some grass on it because they were trying to, I think, accelerate a game there because they had a couple of draws. And it played really, that was where Ferguson, Brett Hutton just came into their own, up on the back bowlers, making it move. And you'd have thought Ferguson had been brought up on it, if I'm honest, the way he bowled. But he's done well in Australia because I think he does what good bowlers do, what Mo Bass does really. He's got a great test record, Mo, because he pitches it up and makes it move.
You were talking about preparation there and preparing before games to do things in games, which kind of leads us on a little bit down the road to what's been decided over the last few days, which is that the county championship should stay at 14 games. Where are you on this, pretty contentious topic, Peter? I mean, you could talk to, 100 people in the game, they could come up with 100 different ideas and versions. Where are you on 14 games, and do we play too much, even though you played a lot and won a lot and won the title?
Well, my first question was, how much did it cost to get to the point that we stayed exactly the bloody same?
Yeah, quite.
Yeah, I think the fundamental thing for me is, I think the first acceptance is that you can't fit 4 comps into our summer. You never could before, when we had the B&H, the NatWest, Sunday League, and the Championship. And we had 3-day cricket. And basically what happened then, we started to struggle a bit internationally, so we changed the system. We went to 3 comps and they all matched the global game. We went to 4-day cricket, T20 and 50. Make sure the best players played the best formats to be ready to play. I reckon after that, and they did other things, they had Loughborough, century pool players and all that sort of stuff. We became number 1 in the world and we won our first global tournament. So I think it worked. We've now gone back to 4 comps with 100 coming in, which is understandable why, but the way it fits now, you can't quite fit it all in. So the only way you can fit it in is you're going to have to reduce something. The question is what you're going to reduce. Or you're going to have to put something behind something or mix something up, because it's not. Now, what the system for that is, wow, that's not an easy one when you're trying to get all the counties to agree. I think the simplest system might not be the one that the counties want, because it might not generate enough revenue for them. And we have to, the first thing we have to do is protect our domestic game. It's a brilliant product. We need to protect 4-day cricket. There's no doubt about that. Can we do it with staying at 14 games without it getting compromised? I'm not sure. I think the right decision, when it came to 13 game model against the 14, I wasn't sure. It came in really late that if we weren't sure what we're doing, we should stay with what we've got until we know exactly what that plan should be. I think what the plan should be, there's so many different. I've got plenty of ideas of what I could do. I don't really want to sit down and go through them all, because it'll start another huge debate going. But I've got my thoughts on it, as everybody has. But try and get those to a group of people to agree that can get past those chairmen is a really difficult one.
How has coaching changed for you? I mean, you go back to 2003, and where you could be a bit surer of the players that you had for the season. And in fact, funnily enough, there's an article in the Times today about football coaching, and it's sort of almost casting football managers, coaches in 2 camps, either control freaks or liberators. Obviously, using control freaks like Mikel Arteta, for instance, against Carlos Ancelotti, who's a much more liberated type of coach. Where are you on that now? You probably, maybe you've evolved, have you, from one to the other, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, I think generally, when you first start coaching, you probably think you want to control more than you should, without a shadow of a doubt, because you think you should have the answers when, you don't have all the answers. I think as you evolve, you start to learn that actually this is all based on trust, and all you can do is try and basically make sure that you support players. Yes, when this idea that you set them free to go and play and be a liberator, I think quite like the liberator idea because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to basically let them just enjoy playing the game like they used to. It's what Brendan has set his goal at internationally with Stokesy, and they've done a great job at that. I think that's been great to watch live. What you can't control, however, what you do is the pressure that might come internationally from commentators, the game, the pressure of the game. So I think from the coach to try and help people keep it in context, I think is great. I'd be now on the liberator side, definitely. It's really interesting because my career, when I was internationally, I was getting a hard time as being somebody who was data geeking it. And in some ways, at the time, I was taking data out because we had Nathan, who was brilliant, actually, but we'd got stuck with it at the time. But like most things, the public perception can be one and what goes on inside.
So you think that was a slightly unfair label, really?
Well, I didn't have a laptop at the time, so that was quite unfair at the time. So I think it wasn't a truth, that's for sure, because it wasn't my style then. What I would say, my first time I coached internationally, I was over enthusiastic to drive people, and they didn't need driving. What they needed at that time, the two times I've taken over, have been both after 5-0 Ashes losses, where you've got a lot of broken people in many ways who've been battered in Australia. In one of the most brutal tours you can go on. If you don't get it right, if you do get it right, it's a euphoric tour. But if you don't, it's a tough place to be. So, first time I didn't understand it. Second time I understood it completely. And frustrated second time for me because it was 13 months long. So there's no real time to build, really. It sort of happened too quick. But at that point, I was a different coach than my first time. And you said, have I evolved hugely as a coach? From starting off being basically, you can be a bit of a dangerous enthusiast when you first start. You just want to get everybody better like yesterday, and you end up saying too much and buzzing around too much. As you evolve, you learn to, watch a lot to say a little, I think, in mainly coaching. You watch and you see something. And normally for me, if I coach anything, if it's technical, it's basics, balance, alignments, rhythms, that's about it, really. The rest is about a lot of how they apply what they've got. So you've got a swing of the bat, you've got a method how you apply it. And how you apply it is really important. So if you don't play well in the offside, you better leave well, play through the leg side. Or you can spend all your life trying to become good at what you're not good at, if you know what I mean. So a lot of sport is not just about what you've got, it's about how you go about with what you've got, really. So there's a bit of both goes on. But generally, you're trying to have, if a coach, I often say to anybody who works at our place, and the players, we should come with a government health warning like cigarettes used to. We could damage your health. So if we could take away your brain, be careful. Because our job isn't to do that. Our job's to be there with you and let you work stuff out, help you work stuff out. You've got to work it out. If you can't work out the top of off stump and how to play it when it's moving, then you won't have a career in England. You're gone. That's the game. But if you work it out, you're going to have a brilliant time.
So we've just come to the end of the season. So the season lasts something like 6 months. So how many technical conversations would you have had with players this season? I'm technical as opposed to sort of, I don't know, mental or attitude or strategy. I mean, actual technical conversations like I don't know what you might say, your off drive's not working or whatever it is. This is what you might want to do. How many of those would you have had during the season? Is it like, can you count them on one hand, or is it more than that?
Oh, we work with players every day, every single. We might be quite different, but how those conversations happen isn't like people think they happen. Like you don't say, "Oh, your on drive's not working today." I mean, basically, there's three basics of the game for me. Pretty much whatever you do. One is balance. Is your head roughly inside your shoulders, and are your eyes roughly level? And if they're not, I'm going to say to somebody, "I think you're falling over a bit, mate. What do you reckon?" That's about it. So you repair it because every morning you repair your technique. The myth of you don't repair stuff, you repair everything. I would say if you're doing podcasts, you might want to make sure you're not speaking too fast or whatever it might be. I don't know, but there'll be something you're repairing to make sure I'm on my best form if it's a really big game. Coaching can help with that.
Normally it's me not turning up on time, isn't it, Simon? But I was here early today.
Yeah. Well done, Yoz. Continue,
Thanks.
Peter.
Thank you.
But like So basically, balance. Alignment is, as a batter, you go at the bat, you go at the bowler. A lot of batters got extra cover still when we first get the youngsters. The schoolboy drive is something that is we phrased it, but actually, you still watch a lot of youngsters spend half their life playing cover drives. Well, in first class cricket and Test, you don't get that many, so you better come at the right alignment, and then really the hidden one is your rhythm. And sometimes, if I think a player's tight or tense, you try to help them relax. Now, you might say something, he might just travel after them. But you're trying to get them relaxed so they're in the state that you like, where they are. So you get to know your players. So I know when a player's on. Some players work best when they are pretty serious and pretty on. Other lads, they're like the cheeky chappies. They're a bit better when they're just a bit more having fun. So you're trying to help them get where they want to be. So they play their best. That's about it, really. So, but I don't like the thought of coaching of just leave somebody to it. It'll be fine, because I think that's what you have specialist coaches for often, because they know the person they're working with. They're not telling them what to do. They're just supporting. They're just there. Why would a musician have a vocal coach? Why would a golfer have a coach? Because they know their game well, inside out. And if you can't watch yourself, so if something basic has slipped, the coach might say, just have a look at this. Just make sure you know what you're on here. And if he does, or she does, that could just be enough just to get him feeling confident enough to go out and get through. Batting's about your first 20 balls, probably bowling. Once you get into a spell, much easier. It's often about starting. When people talk process and all, process is important because it's the spark plug that starts and ending. Once it's going, put it in cruise control and play the game.
Also fielding. I mean, just quickly to talk about fielding, because you were a keeper, obviously. I always felt with fielding practice, we practiced a lot of high catches. People would whack. Loved the idea. The coach loved the idea of moosing it into orbit, so we were standing on the boundary catch. And I would think, well, apart from one-day cricket, how often do you actually catch a skyer? Hardly ever. I'll probably count 3 or 4 in my career, I'd say. So is that also something that you focus on? I mean, you talked about your slip catching there, for instance, and which has been very good, obviously. So how do you approach that?
We do it. We'll catch every day, because there's 2 sorts of things for catching for me. One, because everybody can catch. Everybody assumes they can catch different sorts of catches. So it doesn't mean you can catch a ball low right at 80 miles an hour flying at, if you know what I mean. So you set things up into shapes, you do it. So the high catches, we can hit high catches, which are like a warm-up. You just whack them and they go straight to him, he catches them. And sometimes you do that because not everything you do has to be to get better. Some of the things you do are just because they're warm-up. They just get your eyes and get you moving, get you going, and it's quite nice practice. We've got, and both for us would be our batter, who's, as a coach, has still got an unbelievable sense of timing. So he can hit balls, what I would say, flat, with the right shape you'd get in a one-day game when they ping at you on the boundary and they hit you a bit before you think you should. Now, when he does those to the players, the good players can catch them and the youngsters can't. And that, to me, is where then suddenly they realise, oh, hang on, I've got some work to do. Because we play all formats. I've not met a player yet who doesn't want to play in T20. So if they want to play in T20, they're going to get better sometimes practicing during 4-day. Because remember, these players are, I don't think you can just reserve getting better for the winter. You have to keep getting better in the summer, because county cricket domestic cricket, quite rightly, is you're playing to win every day, but you're also, if you're in it, for a lot of players, they're also trying to get out of it to play international cricket or something else. Why wouldn't they? So if you want to play the best standard of cricket you can, if you can't field for one, you're going to expose really fast. So many people go into an international game, and part of it's not just physical fitness, it's just in awareness. Stuart Broad wouldn't say he was the quickest or whatever, but I asked him once, why do you think you're on all the time? He said, because if I drop one on Sky, they just keep replaying it. So I'm on, and I've got used to it. It's my habit. I've got my 10-second rule that literally, bang, I'm on. When the balls come in, I'm on for those. Then I can chill. But that is a habit. So fielding practice has specifics. I mean, I started as a fielding coach, really, as a keeping coach and fielding. Catching I love because of that. And again, people assume they can catch. So, the basis of catching is your head close to your hand. If it isn't, then it's not as much chance as it will do if it's close to it. Now, often people talk about treat it like an egg and all this sort of stuff about catching, give with a ball. Total rubbish to me. Nobody gives with the ball, really. You give with your body. So there's things in the game that are like myths. Get your foot to the pitch, the ball as a batter. It's a myth. Nobody does. So those myths of the game as coaches, we try and break down for players to work out how they play. Batting's about shapes. Bowling's often about shapes. Simpler things that they can get their head around, that they can work with, and hopefully get better.
One nice thing for you, just to sort of finish on the sort of championship, you were able to celebrate by a match at home. Because I remember, all the championship victories I played in, we were away, including that game at Hove. So it sort of leaves you with a slightly different feeling. Whereas if you can win at home, with all your fans around, that must be a deeper sensation.
Yeah, it was brilliant actually, yours, because and again, you remember different things. So Sussex, we won at home. And that was a brilliant moment because the ground kept filling up. People knew we were going to get over the line. We needed a certain amount of runs to get to a point. And over lunchtime, we needed something like 15 or 20 to get it. And over lunchtime, probably another 2,000 people came in. And that was brilliant. And then the game stopped actually weirdly for 30 minutes as the lads did a lap of honour. That happened now. Crazy. Daffy DeFreitas was captain of Leicester, and somewhere the umpires and Daffy said, okay. They said all the players ran on and did a lap. Yesterday, the moment yesterday was great. When the lads, the stage they set to give the trophies on the far side of the ground, and the lads all walked across, and I was at the back actually walking behind them all, and then suddenly all the fans started clapping as they came across. So I took a photo on my phone. Lovely moment, brilliant. Something you don't get when you're away. Lancs we won when we were away at Taunton, which was, again, there was a lot of fans there still, but not quite the same. But we had a great moment. We drove back into the next day, definitely a bit worse for wear. We got back to the ground at about probably 4 in the afternoon, I think, something like that. And as we drove in the car park, there was about 2,000 people in the car park of Old Trafford, which was brilliant, to be fair. So all those things are memories, but you're right, winning at home is special. We had a bit of a goal this year to try and connect more to our fans and play better at home as well. So on many counts, it was lovely.
I recall when we won at Hove. It was great. It was a great feeling. Obviously, I took the last 2 wickets in 2 balls. The tail.
I was probably one.
No, you were. I think you were just before that. Actually, I think the Sussex tail wasn't great, and I managed to get 2 in 2. So it meant I was on a hat trick. But we didn't have another game until the following year. Does it count if you? So I was on a hat trick anyway the following season, and
did you get it?
Simon's saying no. Well, our first game of the season was at Cambridge University, Fenners. So actually, what a great chance to get a hat trick. And I revved myself up, and everyone kind of really got me geared up to bowl this ball to get a hat trick spanning about 6 months. I bowled a wide, so it was not to be. Anyway, I mean, well, what a fantastic achievement! And were you watching or sort of aware of what was going on elsewhere? Because I was watching the Hampshire game against Surrey, and obviously Hampshire struggled, and then there was this 33 to win with 1 wicket left overnight, and they eked it closer and closer, and then Chahar got that final wicket. Surrey won by 20 runs, so suddenly it was consigning Hampshire to relegation, and then Durham, who only had to bat out the day at Yorkshire, got bowled out for 85. So they've been relegated by 1 point from Hampshire. Extraordinary.
Extraordinary that. I mean, I didn't realise actually because I saw Hampshire got beat actually and thought, whoa, that's a tough day at the office for them. There's no doubt about that because somebody's got a goal, but it's always tough. And there's no doubt about that. And they've got a great record in the first division. And then literally we were meeting up to go and watch football, and I'd sort of lost track. I was doing other things. Got to the pub actually to see the lads before we went in. Sat next to Josh Tom just had a chat, and I said something like, "Yeah, tough day for Hampshire," and he said, "What do you mean?" Durham was just being bowled out for 85. Couldn't believe it, to be fair. But what it does show, as I think I said earlier, that batting's a funny thing, isn't it? Pressure of surviving. I mean, again, you go to conversations you have with players and stuff, the different ways you play the game, So I think one of the things I would say to any player, and it's something I think you'd see the reasons why Brendan's trying to push the way he's doing it, I would say, would be you either bat to survive, i.e. not get out, or you bat to score a run. And if you're batting to not get out, at a higher level, you get nothing. It's like bowling to not go for runs. You're in trouble. If you bowl to get with people out, you have a different mentality. If you feel to make a difference rather than feel not to make a mistake, you're going to be a better player. But this whole idea of surviving or forming or hunting somebody or playing the game with a different mentality is fundamental, really, I think, if you want to play higher level. And
Is
that,
there
to me,
is
that's what Durham did. They were surviving a day
Yeah.
and then it's different.
Is there a gap opening up, would you say, between the sort of top 5 or 6 sides and the rest in the first division, or not?
Well, you'd say no, because we weren't in that till this year, I would suppose. So from that point of view, I think one thing I think is that, I think you track how a side's gone. So for us, it was when I first joined head coaching in 17, and we won and one day trophy, had a very good team. Then in 18, a lot of players retired. And 19, 20 went through this where we got beat. We didn't win in 19. And we went through this extraordinary amount of days without winning the game. But that, to me, is where we started to build. And that first time we really saw that was in 21, where it was COVID year. And we finished third in what was then the conference because of COVID, just behind Warwickshire. But we won more games than any other team that year. Then we won the second division 22, which again showed the side were progressing. 23, 24, we survived in the division and we're getting better. And 25, we've obviously gone and won it. So there's a progression to it. So I don't think you don't come from nowhere. Players get better. Haseem Hameed, I think, is probably averaged over 53 years in a row now at Championship cricket. So the last person I saw playing to that level for us was Duckett, starting to play at a level where, you look at Haas now, his strike rate's gone up, the way he plays has gone up. So you hope people view him for what he is now, not what he was as a player. Because if he started off as probably trying to survive batting and back time, he's now not that sort of player. And he got a double 100 in a day for us this year against Durham. He went to double 100 with 2 sixes. So he's a different player. So that's what playing cricket can do for you. You can go away and work at your game. A lot of domestic systems don't play that volume. That's where our volume works for batters, definitely. They get a chance to evolve their game in a certain way.
Peter, we've come to the end of the season, and of course it all stops you now. You get a huge break, don't you? Because the season doesn't start until next April. Oh, Simon, how wrong can you be? Because you've got a very busy winter coming up, not with Nottinghamshire. Well, presumably some Nottinghamshire work to do from afar, but you've got your next job is with the Dallas Lone Stars. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it came about because Samit Patel is captain of the Lone Stars, and he went last year. And I think Mickey Arthur did it last year, and Mickey couldn't do it this year. And he said to me, "Listen, would I do it?" So I said, "Yeah, okay, I'm in. Let's go for it." It's come about a bit quicker than I thought. I didn't know what the dates were particularly. That it's coming out a bit quicker than I thought because I go on Wednesday. But yeah, I look forward to it. I mean, like a lot of the things, the T10, I've been doing the Abu Dhabi T10 as a batting coach with Mushtaq Ahmed, which was brilliant last year. And then on to the Melbourne Stars, which I've been there 2 years, loved it. And lots of different things happen. You come across different players, you learn a lot. So take the Abu Dhabi one last year. I was the batting coach, God forbid, for Joss Butler, Nicky Poran, Riley Rousseau, Marcus Stoinis, David Visa, Azam Khan. Anyway, I mean, the only thing I said to all of them when I got there, I said, "Listen, fellas, when you're on the coach, you haven't got anything else to do. Are you happy for me to come and talk to you, basically, and tell me things that have been really, really important to you in your career that have helped you, that I can pass it on? I deal with a lot of young players." So I can pass some of that information on if you're happy. And to be fair, I know Josh well anyway from Lancashire. They were brilliant. They're a lot of those players for me are brilliant at passing information on. I think if you do it via coaches, it's not a bad way for us because we come across a lot of people, and you're not going to give it to them verbatim to a player. But when Josh Butler says something like, I had to practice really hard at staying relaxed when the ball wasn't quite there to make sure I got my strike right, or something like that. It's a great bit of info to be able to tell a younger player who's trying to master that craft.
So you're giving, so rather than giving them something, you're taking from them.
Absolutely. So I was lucky enough to coach. Give you an example. I was lucky to coach Joe Root in COVID. So he came to Trent Bridge and said, would I work with him? So I did, yeah. So I coached him before he went back into play for England. And we do sort of one-to-ones. And I remember when he first came in, I said, listen, because I worked with Joe when I first came into England, second time in. And I said to Joe, listen, you're now probably the number one back in the world. So I'm hoping you'll pass some information on to me about all the stuff you know so I can pass it on. And he was brilliant, to be fair. Some of the stuff he was helping, working out about playing spin and whatever that he'd have got from a Dravid or from other people, that information, sort of passing on of information around the game, I think is something we never want to lose. And it's something that the franchise world can give you. And it's something that you can get as a coach when you go and see one player, but two systems. So I can watch Mushtaq Ahmed operate. I can go to Melbourne Stars and I get to see the Aussie system work a little bit and how they go about stuff, which is different. And you might say, well, I really like that. I love the way they're going about that. One of the Aussie strengths for me is they're pretty straightforward in how they go about their cricket. They're not overcomplicated. They keep it pretty straightforward and simple, which I really like. So you always take stuff and then you can hopefully pass that on either into your own system or to a player or somebody else, and they can do with what they like. So I'd say to any player, listen, I'll tell you, I heard this, might be relevant for you, but if it's not, it's absolutely fine. I don't want you to run my system, you run yours. And if it goes wrong, you're not going to blame me. You can blame yourself. So I think probably when you first start coaching, there's a danger you want people to do it a certain way. I'm certainly nowhere near that. I'd always say, listen, you have one system in your mind and that's yours. It's an evolving system that it'll evolve because you come across different people, you're playing different games. If I hear things that I think might help you evolve that system, I'm going to tell you.
Have you ever aspired to working in the IPL?
Yeah, I'd love to see it, if I'm honest. I think it's obviously a brilliant tournament. Hasn't worked for me yet because, well, it doesn't fit with county cricket for
It
starters.
clashes, yeah.
It's a clash. But the opportunity at some point to go there and work within a coaching team somewhere would be a brilliant experience, I think.
Because I suppose, actually, in the same way as you're saying, going to the Big Bash or going to work with Dallas Lone Stars or in Abu Dhabi at the T10, you're drawing on so many valuable influences, which can be, expanded if you spent some time in the IPL, which is what the IPL is in a way. It's a sort of cricketing brainstorm, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think in some ways, I mean, I've been lucky. I've been in the game so long now that, the game doesn't owe me anything. So I remember when into the Melbourne Stars, the first line I said to the lads at the Melbourne Stars was, listen, I'm going to have a crack here. I'm going to have a great time. So whatever happens, I'm not sure how a Pom ended up coaching the Melbourne Stars, but he did. So I'm going to have a great time. So I hope that you do. Let's make sure that is our number one mantra, really, that we're playing in a great tournament. We're going to live it. We try and get better because they haven't done so well for a couple of years. So let's go at it. And a lot of times I'd ask the senior players, and the senior players that, be it Glenn Maxwell, Marcus Stoinis, some of the senior lads at the time, Nathan Coulter now. If I'm honest, they were saying to me, we need to do a bit more work. We want to get stuck in it a bit. We need to practice a bit harder, do things differently, because any player that's a good player wants to play in a winning team. And they want to enjoy what they're doing. And they know that, the real enjoyment, it comes from, yes, they enjoy it off the field, but on the field, they're competitive and the people they play with can be competitive and they get stuck in and have a go.
And some of our listeners might not know this, that the Melbourne Stars are now the only franchise team that have not won the Big Bash. Peter's been with them for a couple of years. His contract was renewed for a couple of years after they lost their first 5 games last season, but then had a remarkable renaissance and qualified for the knockout stages, but lost the Sydney Thunder. So I always this is a bit tongue in cheek, but I always wonder whether Melbourne Stars is the wrong name. I think you just go for something a bit more understated, and then you become the Melbourne Stars when you win the Big Bash. Anyway.
Melbourne Plodders. But
Melbourne
not anymore. Not after another
Yeah.
year with you.
I mean, I think it was. I mean, it's the model, the where the Big Bash has changed. I think probably where they first started the Melbourne Stars. If you think about it, it was they had Shane Warne, they had KP, they had a lot of those players. But then I think in some ways it was probably easier to attract players there. Now that because the competition in the franchise world and the way it is now. I think that's the same anywhere, unless you're playing in one of what the IPL or something. You have to grow your own players as well as bring in. And I think is where, to get the Scorchers in the Big Bash have been the best team over the last few years, though they didn't win it last year. But they produced the most homegrown talent, I would say. Western Australia, I think generally in both the Shield and in they've got this core of players that keep coming through, and then they add 2 or 3 players to it to put the icing on the cake.
I mean, we should let you go. Really, I'm just thinking. My kids never saw me play, and I haven't sort of achieved anything much since. Your Tom would never have seen you play, but now he has the satisfaction of being the son of the championship title winning coach. So how's he responded to you?
I tell you what, it's been a really interesting with Tom because, I give Tom a lot of credit. He's had a really good summer this year, and he's had a tough ride, Tommy, because in some ways, as a father and son as a coach, and you're always open to the criticism of he's getting an easy ride and stuff like that. It probably works the other way, I think, really, for him. But he's moved actually now to white ball cricket. He's one of the sort of, he's not retired from red ball, but he's moved. He's had a really good summer, but he's grown a lot as a bloke. I think what I do like is, I know he's really pleased for me. In some ways, you get some recognition for doing 3 and 3 and whatever. And coach is not about that. It's about, but it's actually nice to get it once in a while, to be fair, that the fact that he's had to go through and see me cop a lot of stick, and he now gets to see it the other way around. Listen, I love watching him play as I watch everybody play, but I think in general, it's not your preference to coach your son. Let's put it that way. It's not the number one
It's
on your
almost
list.
impossible. I haven't coached any of my kids. I don't listen
so in
to a
many
word.
ways, but it changes. He's taught me a lot, Tom, because having a son who plays the game gives you an insight into how the modern player might think.
Yeah.
And it's different. It's so different. And obviously, when Tom was growing up, he'd have people like, Luke Wood and all his mates around, and you'd listen to them talk, and you listen to them and how they were, and it helps you start to think, well, okay, it's partly where I think now as a coach, you coach the individual rather than the team, and then you have to help them go into teams because the world's an individual place now, and celebrate the individual, and then realistic the team forms, but then you have to make sure that they, when people say there's no individual agenda, they're talking rubbish. Of course there is. Everybody wants to do well, just can't go above the teams. So this idea of when I first started coaching, it was more get a group of blokes together and we just go team bond, go play. We know no one else we'd be really tight as a group and we just go through it. Now you don't do that, Imagine Man United losing one of their players for a month to go and play for Real Madrid. I mean, that's what happens in the 100. You just lose one of your players, he goes plays for London Spirit. Then you get him back. Maybe injured, maybe not. They have international, probably football is the equivalent. But those things are in cricket. So you need to make sure that all your players, they carry the info, they're the product, but they actually, when they're playing for you, they're totally committed to Notts and the environment and the fun we have and how we go about it. And I think that anything that's got us over the line in any trophy I've always won, it's been the fact that the lads themselves get tight and enjoy it, love it. And they know how to work themselves in a team, and they know how to work themselves and they go into somebody else's team.
You should go round to Postecoglou's house then, the Notts Forest manager, because he hasn't made much of a success of it so far. You know,
He's
go
just
and
won
explain
a
your
trophy
strategy.
at Tottenham.
No,
I mean, I think-
yeah, no, of course they won that, but their league performances were terrible, and so have
Yeah,
Forest so far as well.
Jeremy in charge for about 2 weeks. That's the nature of modern sport, isn't it? You get about 2 weeks and then everyone's on your back.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, and he's obviously got a style of play he wants to bring in and whatever. So, but you're right. I mean, the world has changed, hasn't it? Because you used to have. So, my first job at Sussex, no one really paid attention to us when I first came in. We were rubbish, probably to start with. But you could then evolve. Yours, when you started and I started, you could slide a batter in at 7 and let him just sort of go in the team for a bit. Or a bowler could fit within a bowling group. And if he wasn't that good, but you could fight, but you knew he was going to be. But now it's tough now because the criticism, certainly in social media, I'm not talking about commentators really, it's more just generally the public themselves. We're more impatient, aren't we?
Mm.
You know,
And there's all the data there, and as you say, the social media sort of amplifies that.
Yeah, it does. It does. So the players have got to be quite tough about it, I think, in some ways. And I think they are in many ways. I think they've got used to it. You know, they become a sort of, you know, they live online, so they have to be able to survive online. The different stuff that goes with it, I think. Is that a cat just walking past yours?
Yeah. Yes, it is. Which means it's probably time to be. Is time for feeding, isn't it? We better let you go. Well, you know, great to catch up and congrats. And well, no peace for the wicked. You're off to the US in a couple of days.
Now, looking forward to it. It'll be good fun. I mean, in some ways, like most things, you'll meet some more players, you do some different stuff. It's a really quick tournament, actually. It's a couple of weeks, and then actually I'll get a decent break then. So it'd be nice to actually come back and actually relax for a little bit, and then before we actually go into the second part of the winter. And the nice thing with our winter is, well, the Big Bash winter is it finishes in January, so you still get quite a nice build-up before we start next year, which will come around pretty quick, I think.
Yeah. And of course the cricket treadmill keeps running. I mean, I see today Nepal have beaten the West Indies for the first time in a T20. West Indies losing to Nepal. India-Pakistan Asia Cup final this afternoon, and of course the Women's World Cup starts next week. England's first match is on the 3rd, Friday the 3rd, against South Africa in Guwahati. So the wheels just keep turning on cricket. It's great to hear, you know, the backstory to your career, Peter, and how you've achieved your momentous title win here this year. So that's it for today. But our next podcast, actually, having looked at how to perform on the field, our next podcast is an interview with Lord Mervyn King, of course, who's currently president of MCC. So his tenure is about to end. And we'll talk more about how to achieve things off the field, business-wise, in cricket. So that's our next podcast. And don't forget also Storylines, our sister podcast. They're doing a lot of work on the Women's World Cup as well. So tune into that as well. Peter, thanks very much for your time. Simon, final word from you?
Oh, well, thank you to Peter. Good luck in Dallas, Abu Dhabi, Melbourne, and then Nottingham. You're right about the treadmill. Yes. Thanks very much, Peter. Thanks for your time. Thanks for listening, everybody. Goodbye for now.